kia ora te whānau, like every great designer and creative and innovator has been at some stage in their life being misunderstood. By the clients, by the industry, sometimes by their whānau as well. So Misunderstood for us is a podcast about the stories behind the creatives, the innovators, the struggles, the breakthroughs, and the moments of doubts, and the resilience that help turn it around. I'm super, super excited. This probably is a familiar face. Like you've been on our content for quite a bit, right? During Auckland Design Week, but super excited to have Lizzi Whaley with us today, the CEO and the founder of Spaceworks.
Not the founder.
Not the founder?
No.
Interesting.
Just
I'm going to have to ask you about that. But
you can.
The CEO of Spaceworks, someone I've been inspired by a long time since I was a young fella. So she is a bit of a force in the Aotearoa design scene, having led over 2,000, I thought 1,800, but 2,000 interior architecture projects across retail, hospitality, and commercial spaces, many of which I definitely know that we have walked through and experienced ourselves. Yeah, so you've done a few like retail, like Tank and stuff, eh?
And Spark and 2 Degrees and Google and...
So cool.
Arnott's and lots of,
Was that the Google head
Griffin's.
office?
No, not the one that they're in now. We did the one before this one.
Oh, wow.
This is my food bag, all sorts of...
Yeah,
all sorts
amazing. Love to jump into your co-papa. So under her leadership, I feel like Spacework has become one of the most trusted studios in the country, not just for beautiful design, but for the building real relationships and championing purpose-led work. I think one of the things when we had a previous kōrero, you mentioned about like what success looks like, and for you, it's about making our clients successful and like giving an experience for the users. That's the success for you. It's not about awards, but it's about the actual outcome, eh? So that's really cool.
Absolutely. I think that design is a tool. I refer to it as the calculator that we use to create business impact. And I feel very honoured that it's a creative and aesthetic industry. However, I don't think of it as a creative or an aesthetic outcome. I think that if you're a great designer, that is a natural outcome that's going to occur. But what I want to see is that businesses have either had staff retention, or they can acquire new staff, or they've increased their sales, or they've managed to reduce costs in operation and function. So I really feel that we don't chase the aesthetics. We know it's an important part of it.
That's right.
But we chase business impact. It's really around business impact, and obviously positive business impact. And I think people employ designers for a reason. And they'll often lead with we want to make it look good, we want to make people feel like they're coming back into the office and all that sort of stuff. But in actual fact, when you boil right back down to it, the actual reason is because there is some form of financial benefit or financial business impact to that company, basically.
It sounds like you know your customers really well, and often great brands talk about the benefits to the customer as opposed to, the product or the service that we do becoming the heroes ourselves. And I love the way that you've spoken about it. You do sound like, you're a pretty seasoned entrepreneur in the sense that like, you get what design is designed to do.
Well, I'm a business owner, so I've owned Spaceworks now for just on 20 years.
20 years.
But the other thing is, design it's about creating an aesthetic or a finished, tangible outcome. But it's actually all driven by something that's very intangible. So design, we aim to create an emotional response inside of someone, and that emotional response then influences behaviour, and the behaviour that is then generated from that emotion then influences outcome or output, and then that then influences business impact. So there's a number of steps, and whilst the creation that we come up with is a physical, tangible space, it starts with an intrinsic driver driven by emotions right at the very beginning. And that, in terms of understanding your client, you really have to understand what are the key drivers for people. And the key drivers for people are emotional. They're either via brand loyalty, or how you feel about a product, or how you might feel about sustainability. But that's all driven from an emotional perspective. That's the part that I love about getting to understand our clients, really. Yeah, man.
I think I read this book, and it talks about 90% of how we make decisions is emotional, and that they did a study. They took a sample of a cluster of people who's had brain damage, and they had brain damage, and they lost the emotional part of their brain, and they put them into a room and they asked them to make a decision about something trivial, right? Like, what should we have for lunch? And they discovered that like the room with people who didn't have that emotional response anymore was amazing at creating elaborate pros and cons lists. None of them can make a decision.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's like and that's one of the sort of like almost like the breaking point, or like the key insights I found, like with critical as well, is that like these emotional experiences matter. And one of the things I remember like being like, you know, like back at uni or being a young designer, I worked for a firm for about a year and kind of discovered that maybe this wasn't fully for me. But I've always trying to figure out like how, if I'm a business owner, right, like I run and I'm looking to get into a new space, the metrics that I'll be measuring myself is like productivity. How can productivity increase the monthly recurring revenue, for example? Yep, there are other factors surrounding that, but ultimately, as a decision maker, I think about these tangibles. How have you found connecting the intangible outcomes from design and connecting them back to, like, I love to hear some stories, you know, for,
It's the secret sauce, basically, that we live and breathe, is you have to, particularly new designers that come and work for us, have to actually illustrate how focusing on things like the functionality, the operational aspects, you have to get right back to the intrinsic drivers. And the drivers for all the parties involved are quite different. So you can understand an executive team or a leadership team or a CEO or a business owner, their intrinsic drivers of what they want to create is quite different to the intrinsic driver of maybe a senior level person of, you know, member of staff, a medium level, or even an intern or grad. You have to understand how to connect that level of emotion to get the outcome. But what we do is we start with what they want to create first, and then you go back to, if that is what we want them to do, what behaviour do we want them to have? And if the behaviour that we want them to have is maybe to come into the office, we want them to come into the office more, you know, COVID, a lot of people are at home. So if we want them to have that behaviour, how do we need to make them feel when they're in order to get that behaviour? So you have to start with the really high level functional things first and then work back to the emotion. But often understanding the emotional part is, obviously with 2,000 projects under our belt, I can do a lot of this very much instinctively, right?
I know.
But teaching others to understand that process is, it's actually around engagement and questioning, and you need to talk to people, and you need to make sure that when you talk to them, you don't kind of give them the answer, you create an open space for them to have conversation. And some are very open to talking about their experiences and what they want, and they're very important because they're often change champions and change leaders. But also the ones that are very quiet are the ones that you also want to get inside of their thought process, because they're the ones that often won't go with the crowd, and they'll often have really good insights. So understanding, it's about engagement, really. It's like with anything, the best way to get a success in any form of project is to have user engagement, and the only way that you have user engagement is to talk to the users.
Having the conversation.
And this is not about a CEO or a GM or someone or other telling us what they think the people need. They need to tell us what they want for the business, and then they need to give us access to the people to ask the people. And there's heaps of things that we can apply in terms of retail principles or workplace strategy for office, or all those sorts of things. So there is best practice, and you can generally, it doesn't matter about the industry, people are pretty inherently the same kind of people. It doesn't matter whether they work for a professional service or whether they work in retail.
I resonate with that,
you just have to understand and talk to the people. 100%. Basically.
It's like, it's simple, but it's so often missed as well, like, and it's not done well. So in a previous life, when I was trying to get critical off the ground before we raised investment, we were bootstrapping this and everything else. I was working part-time for EY in their design thinking division, and my highlight project, so that division was about design-led thinking, so going into organizations, doing human-centered design, engaging people, create a persona about who this person is that we're trying to serve, what are their motivations, what are their aspirations and pain points, what are their practical jobs to be done, and creating that map. And that's just engagement, right? It's having conversations of hundreds of people, capturing those into themes, and again, turning those themes into, okay, well, how do we create the right experience? And then prototype them out to make sure that they work. But my standout, I think the highlight sort of gig in that part was doing that with the Department of Corrections and running Hokairangi. That was I think it was a government initiative for Māori-led rehabilitation, designed by Māori for Māori, and we
so interesting.
man, like we went into for the duration of about a year, we went into prisons and interviewed young fellas, people who's been in and out of the system, to people who's like on sort of the exit, but they have to have a probation officer to try and capture some of the experiences. Man, and some of the conversations we had was like, just try not to cry. Like it was heartbreaking. You know, young people didn't grow up in stable homes, who was like, you know what, life is easier for me in prison. I get a bed and 3 meals, and I feel relatively safe. If I go out into the world, it's a lot harsher for us.
Yeah.
But I really resonate with what you said, right? Like it's about knowing what is the behavior that you want, and what is the feelings, what is the emotion that you want to evoke.
I think it's also important to, well, certainly in our role and in our position and the people that we design for, is to know that you can't hit every metric.
Yeah.
And you can't be all things to all people. So how is the solution that we create or the design that we implement, how does that then deliver on what that brand or that business is trying to so there's no point in us designing for a young demographic if in actual fact their main core customer is a much older generation. The only way that you would do that is if they wanted to change their brand positioning. So it's really around understanding you can't please everyone. And we even know this in the workplace. You have such extremes of different types of personalities. You've got neurodiverse and you've got neurotypical. And people are trying to design one solution or one space for all, and you can't. So how do you get tick the majority of the people that are going to be in that space or using that space, or maybe you have the flexibility to design for the outliers as well. And I certainly think in a workplace environment, because it's actually really important to have that diversity of opinion, diversity of people, culture, thought, all those things, you do need to try and design to allow all of the people to be successful that are inside that business, but you are never going to please everybody.
You can't do everything to 100%, eh? You raise this interesting insight about like behavior, creating the feelings you want to create within people to drive the behavior. Is emotions measurable?
Well, I think it's no. I don't think emotion is measurable. I think influence and behavior is measurable. So, and I believe the quality of the design is not based on what it looks like. I believe the quality of the design is based on the return on investment. So, if a business, and this is potentially breaking it down to something that's quite. Some of the creatives may not like what I'm saying, but if a business engages with us to create some business impact, the quality of the design is based on their return or the performance outcome that we've had, or the influence that we've had, or the behaviour change that we've managed to have. So no, I think because emotions are so subjective and we all have our own filters, you can't actually measure emotion, but you can measure behaviour. So say for example, we designed a space and they maybe had 30 to 40% occupancy in the office, and you managed to increase that occupancy to 60%, then that would have that level of impact or success. If they were trying to get 80% back and you'd hit 60, well, you have to ask yourself, was that a successful return on investment? And sometimes actually the investment is not necessarily great enough for the return that they want. So it is around overlaying creative input, creative output, financial input, and financial output. So it's kind of a little bit much like a seesaw, and you have to find that balance between financial investment will give you does that give you the financial output that you're looking for. So I have been told at times that I create too much of a structured perspective on design, and I lose the creative lens, and I don't ever want people to think that, because I went into design because I am creative, but I also understand the power of design.
Doing it for the outcomes, right?
Doing it for the outcomes. But also design in itself is so subjective.
Yes.
So I've always taught our team that you design for the client, and if somebody can walk into a space and say it's a Spaceworks space, like I've said to you before, we've failed, because your job is to interpret their vision, their desired outcomes, and with their budget. So the outcomes, it shouldn't look like us. It should not look like us. I'd be very happy for people to say Spaceworks did X, Y, and Z, and it's been incredible. We've got the staff love it, and they talk about it and they rave about it and all those things. That is the kind of stamp that we want. We don't want a visual stamp. We want a stamp that talks about performance and connection and impact, and relationships and those sorts of things, and people feeling good in a space.
Yeah, you mentioned that a few times, right? Like, and I love what this conversation is getting me to think is. Because like oftentimes, like when I was in design school, like when I was doing architecture, it was really, like at the time, it felt difficult. Like, so I'll tell you a story. Like when I was in my fourth year of architecture school, we went into Niue for a paper, right? And we went to Niue, we went around the sites and stuff, and part of it was the natural inspiration. Part of it was, this beautiful cave, and there's some really amazing inspired spaces and stuff there. We then went around the market. We then met the MPs within the space as well. It was a hypothetical project about designing a new Parliament building for the MO. And at the time, we got to ask the MP a couple of questions. And one of the things we noted was, well, a country in Niue where most of the population doesn't stay in and it goes overseas. And a country, unfortunately, with the economy, like apart from tourism, there's not a lot of exports, and much of the economy is dependent on like foreign aid, like foreign or maybe whānau sending money back to the families, or Aotearoa sending aid over to be able to maintain the economy, sort of thing. And I remember like being 19, 20 at the time, and we were talking to the government about what form would you like, what is the shape you would like this building to hold? Do you want it to look like a sail when people fly by and get that kind of experience? And I remember feeling so frustrated at the time, and I was like, guys, we're asking the wrong questions here. Like, if this is a country this is the current position of the country, like, no beautiful architecture is going to make a real impact. We have to look at understanding, like, how do we design for resources and exports? How do we solve some of these more fundamental problems, eh? So I asked those questions, and we started digging into it. And my tutors didn't like it. That night, they got drunk. And that night they got drunk, right? And we were living in the same thing. And they like ripped into me. One of them was like, you effing little, you effing little shit. You think you know so much, don't you? I'm gonna bash you. Like, it was intense. But like it was one of those moments, I guess, that kind of galvanized me around, maybe like if this is what my experience of architecture is, and this is what people who's been in the industry for a long time sort of understand this to be, maybe this isn't for me, sort of thing. But I really resonate with what you just said, right? Like, you talk about it's all about the outcomes, all about the people. And from your experience working on 2,000 projects, like, I know that every project and outcome is different, but are there pillars? Are there pillars for a great design outcome? And what is it right now? And where is it going into the future in terms of, Yeah,
I think that there are pillars, because one of the things that I feel about design is the answer, and in asking the right questions, you get the answer. So in relation to your story, we don't just go into design something because we think it looks good. Like if I took you through any one of the jobs that we'd done and you said, why did you do that? I would be able to explain to you the reason behind every element, why we chose that colour, why we did that connection, why we did this, why we did that. There's always a reason for why we designed something. And I think if you don't ask the questions to find out how design can answer the questions, I think it's very difficult to come up with an outcome. But I think certainly the pillars are very... most people would go along with what the pillars are. One is, what does it look like? 2 is, how does it function? And then 3 is, what does it cost? And I find certainly with commercial particularly that there's a problem, a budget and a time frame. Now, in none of those does it talk about creativity, because I
Yeah.
think creativity is something that underpins all of them.
Yeah.
One of the things in residential that I think is slightly more difficult and more challenging is often time. They just don't abide by the same time. It's not unheard of to hear of a project that's run a year over time frame and twice over budget. And it's the whole reason that I got out of residential interiors, because it just frustrated me so much.
Yeah.
There is a problem to solve, there is a program to deliver on, and there is a budget. So why are all of those things forgotten when it comes to residential? There's so many horror stories of people that have ended up having to sell houses after they've built them because they're twice over budget. It is such a fraught way of approaching that part of the construction, design and construction sector, which is why we focus entirely on commercial.
Okay.
Because those are things you can answer. It's very difficult to answer design and architecture questions for someone's home.
Yeah, I get you.
So the pillars, as I say, are for us are around that problem, the budget, and the time frame, and then they all just happen to result in a creative output.
Yeah.
There has to be levels from certainly from a Spaceworks business perspective. Creativity, innovation, and sustainability are our internal pillars that meet on that. From an external perspective, it's those other three. So there's external pillars and internal pillars.
It's almost like sustainability, creativity is just the it's the background music, right? Like it's
why you employ us.
You have to do it.
You're just going to naturally know that this business is going to have creativity, and you look at the portfolio to understand that creativity is a possibility. But I also think that looking at someone's portfolio can be really ambiguous, because you never have context in terms of, well, were there some budget constraints? Were there some building constraints? Were there some other things that the client particularly wanted to achieve that aren't then evident in the portfolio? So we really talk about the fact that we design our client's vision, not our own.
Yeah, beautiful. We've had a lot of awesome chats about this, but I'd love to actually take me back to day one. Like, I'd love to get to know a bit about who you are. Where did you grow up? Take me back to day one. Like, you were born. Where did you grow up, Lizzie? Like,
I was born. I was born in Auckland.
Yes. Whereabouts in Tamaki did you grow up?
Well, I was National Women's born, and then I think I had a moment or two out west, but then mainly in Parnell and Ponsonby. So since a very early and young age, before school, I lived in Ponsonby. Ponsonby was quite a different place 43 years ago. I'm now 48. So 43 years ago, it was quite a different place, and it's much like K Road is now, I would say. Lots of homeless, lots of multicultural families, lots of churches, lots of halfway homes. I loved it. I used to give my sandwiches that my dad put too much butter on the bread and would break the bread, because we didn't have semi-soft back in those days. And I would often give my sandwiches away or my fruit away to the homeless, because one, I felt so incredibly sorry for them, and which was my mother's influence. My mother had many years on the Auckland City Mission Board, and was a real supporter of solutions for homelessness and those sorts of things. So have a real passion.
What does your mum and dad get up to? Like, do you know, growing up?
So my father was an accountant and my mother was a lawyer, so definitely a very professional academic background. And my father is actually my stepfather. He's been around since I was about 3. My biological father was a history professor at the Auckland University. So I come from a very academic background, which I myself struggled with, because I knew that I wasn't an academic. I tried fiercely to be academic.
Did you?
Yeah, I tried so hard. In fact, I took all of the wrong subjects in 6th and 7th form, like
what did you take?
Physics, chemistry, stats, calc, something or other. I think I might have taken history, owed to my father, and a couple of other things. And I failed big time, terribly. I don't even think I got university entrance. So I went off and worked for a paint company when I was in 6th form, sort of leading all the way through my 7th form, and I went and worked there full time after I finished school, because I couldn't go to university. I didn't have anything to go in on. Also didn't kind of really know where I fit.
Did you like, I mean, what were you like as a kid? Like, did Did you
incredibly troubled.
Yeah.
Very troubled as a 14-year-old, especially coming from a situation where my father didn't have anything to do with me specifically, but I knew I had 6 older brothers and sister, halves and steps, and I had a younger brother. So I was incredibly troubled by the fact that it apparently didn't want to know me, whether that be true or not is, whatever it is, but I just kind of felt a bit unwanted. I definitely knew also that I was struggling with holding attention. So,
because back in the day, it wouldn't have been diagnosed, right?
No, diagnosed with ADHD about a couple of years ago, mainly going through the journey with my daughter, and as we know that perimenopause brings out ADHD symptoms for women a lot more, which is why women are getting diagnosed much later in life.
Gotcha.
And also, they don't come across the same typical hyperactivity in the body. It's more hyperactive in the mind rather than the body, so it goes sort of unnoticed. And when I was diagnosed and then medicated, it was a life changer for me. So everything about my schooling kind of all of a sudden made sense, and it was part of the real passion that I had to get my daughter diagnosed, was because I didn't want her to experience what I experienced at school, which was just a complete inability to focus. I couldn't find my people. I was definitely a very social person, so I didn't have any problem on the social front, but I just felt like such a fraud and such a fake, and I knew that I was smart, but I would always say I was street smart, not book smart, because I just couldn't make the whole book part work. So I just stopped really turning up to school. And then,
So did you like stop turning up to school? Did you find, you mentioned that you worked for a paint shop. Did you say in sixth form?
I started when I was in sixth form, I started working for a paint shop called Alto Colour, and I fast became their resident colour matcher, so I made all their colours and their colour ranges, and then I became technical expert for the paint company and would go out, if there were any product failures, would go out and do that. And then I became their franchise manager and looked after the franchises they had, and I ended up being there for 9 years, and for the age that I was incredibly successful.
16, 17?
I started at 16, 17, and I left when I was about 24, I think, 24, 25.
It's a good season, eh? Like,
I
mean, you stayed there for that long. There's got to be a reason, right? Like I
was good at it.
You were good at it.
I finally found something that I was good at, and it was also my foray into creativity. So my boss at the time, her husband was an architect called Marsh Cook, and he was an incredibly good architect, and he actually designed a house for my parents. And there was this sort of passion for design and architecture and proportion and shape and understanding how colour influences behaviour, and we would make colours for the Auckland City Art Gallery for art. So I just kind of started to understand the relationship between how people felt in space, influenced largely by colour. And they supported me to go and get my design degree. So I had a full-time 40-hour-a-week job on top of my full-time design degree.
When you say design degree, what, like
Bachelor of Spatial Design. So I went to AUT.
Okay. What was that like? I mean, how did you manage doing a full-time job while doing a design degree too? Like, what was that season and period like for you, Lizzi?
It was chaotic, but I mean, I do everything at 100%, and all of a sudden I found something that I connected with and I was good at. So I loved it. It was a really great time in my life. Did you find a bit about, did you find your thing at uni, like at AUT, post working at the paint shop? Like, what was your experience like? I think if you talk to any of the people I went to school at university with, they knew that I would be successful in business. But 3 years of a degree, I was like, come on, can't we get this done in 1 year? It just felt like a complete fast, turning up and having to go and sit through these ridiculous classes. I was like, chop, I'm ready, come on, let's get on to the world. So I just turned up and did what I needed to do to get the degree, because I just had stuff to go on and do. And I did, and then I ended up, probably a year after university, ending up pregnant with my son. And he, a beautiful soul. He is so smart, it's not funny. He is so intelligent. He is all of the academic that I wanted, but never was. And I look at him in awe. And
he's got the throwback jeans, eh?
I'm like,
whānau.
how the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, he is really smart, really, really, really smart.
Yeah.
And he just aces school, excellences, A pluses. He's fourth year engineering. He's just such a smart cookie.
He's killing it, is he? Yeah. I mean, Lizzie, like, I'd probably an argument made that you are that too. You are smart too, right? I mean, you just haven't.
I see it now.
You haven't been.
Yeah, I see it now, and I see when you can channel people's skills into something that they're not only passionate about, but where they feel that they've got a sense of purpose. You just allow someone to just completely shine. And I know I'm good at what I do. It has taken me a very long time to appreciate that what I do is, in my sector of the world, is special, and that I can connect with what people want with the emotional aspect and the behaviour. And I think I have spent so many years working on my own emotional intelligence and awareness that it's now a really good skill when it comes to business, when it comes to sales, when it comes to relationships, nuances of language, all of those things. So yeah.
So you were working a full-time job, you were studying too at the same time, and you had your first kid. What was that like? You know, like
it was
that
wild.
period of time. Yeah.
It was wild, but I don't do things by halves.
No.
And it wasn't long after my son had been born, probably about 8 or 9 months, that I started to work at Spaceworks. So I started there when I was about 26 or 27.
Wow. Yeah.
And I worked there for about 2 years, and then my boss decided that she was going to sell. She decided that the industry was moving too fast and it was changing, and it was not something that she enjoyed, and she wanted to go into a different form of design where she was creating value and for residential properties for people that wanted to sell, or maybe they wanted to find more equity in the property, so they wanted to do it up and then, you know, and those sorts of things.
Did you say you were 26 when you started working for
I was 26 when I had my son, and I think I was about just on 27 when I started working at Spaceworks. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so 21, 22 years now I've been at Spaceworks, yeah.
And then so she decided to sell, and then she goes,
did.
Lizzie, do you want to buy me out? Or do you
No,
wanna...
she didn't think that at all, because I was a single mother living with my parents at the time.
Shucks.
And the idea of being able to buy a business, it was 450,000 was the business. It wasn't a huge business, but it had a lot of, look, I think in today's terms I probably overpaid.
Yeah.
But I knew the value, so for me it was worth it.
100%.
And I knew what I could do with it. I was very, very privileged and honoured to pay that amount, because that, for me, that was a good buy.
You gotta tell me, Lizzie, like from one entrepreneur to another, like how did you make that work?
I don't know. So the other wild story is, at the time I was doing a body sculpting competition as well.
Ooh, hang on a minute. Body sculpting. Wait, what is body sculpting? Is that like
It's like bodybuilding. But the bodybuilders get really jacked and really big, whereas body sculpting is more around you know, muscles, but you're about getting lean rather than getting big.
Okay.
So I was doing that at the same time.
True.
And yeah.
Wait. Hang on a minute. Let's just not skip over that. When did you get into body sculpting? Like,
about 27.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't last long. It was only about it. I did the regionals, came second in the regionals, and then went to nationals. So
we gotta. Can you share some photos? We gotta put some of those photos in.
Maybe.
What? Yeah.
So it was about, so I bought the business in, I think it was September, or I negotiated the sale price in September, and then I had a 30-day due diligence period to find the money, because I was a single parent, as I said, living at home with my parents. I didn't have any money. I had a car and I had a son.
I know.
So from a business perspective, it was probably not a very viable asset to the bank.
Yeah.
So I told everybody I was going to buy this business. Everybody, I've put an offer in, this, that, and the other. Haven't quite got the right solution yet. I need to find the money, this, that, and the other. My parents, lovely parents, gave me $25,000.
Wow.
But we all know $25,000 in relation to $450,000 is not enough for a bank to go, hey, yeah, this is a viable.
Yeah.
So I met this guy called Phil Grigg from the ANZ Bank. I'm not even sure how I got introduced to him.
Yeah.
And I would literally ring him every day and go, okay, so I've still got my 25,000, and here's all the information, and this is who I am, and this is how I sell it. And he'd go, but a little bit still a bit risky for the bank. You need to go and find this, that, and the other. So I'd go and get him some more information and do this. And I rang him every day for 4 weeks, which was the due diligence period. On about the last week,
he gave you a list. This is show me more documentation. Show me more. Did you have to go and fundraise more from friends and family as well?
In the end, I managed to get an investor for a third.
Nice.
And then I had to come up with a shareholders agreement and this, that, and the other. Now, I'm very thankful to that shareholder for giving me the leg up into the business. The relationship fell over monumentally not long.
It's a common story in business.
About a year in, and we spent much time in litigation and then in a future high court case, which nearly ruined me emotionally.
You would have been, what, in your 20s still, right? 28, 29?
No, the high court case actually didn't come to fruition until 2016. So the relationship fell over about 2 to 3 years into the ownership of Spaceworks, so back in 2008. And obviously we went into the GFC. So good 3 or 4 years getting through the GFC and all that sort of stuff. And then business as usual, that investor had gone, he'd been exited out of the business, would come up with an arrangement. He then felt that I didn't honour my share of the arrangement, so we went to the High Court and fought for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, well, so many questions for you, Lizzie, but one thing that I often that stands out is, often when people think about people who run businesses, you tend to think this highlight reel of success and luxuries. It's not. It's the tip of the iceberg, right? Like the amount of work and suffering and challenges that a founder has to go through. Like this, I can probably share a lot of war stories on my side too. But I mean, I love to ask, right? Like you went through this. Like one of the things I often think about is that when going through a real tough time, I often trying to figure out like what is this phase of my life designed to teach me. And in the time when I'm going through it, it's extremely hard and difficult, but I've often found that hindsight is 20/20, and often in hindsight, I would enter into this other situation where I'm like, oh shit, this really bad experience that I had when I was, in my mid-20s have actually given me the resilience or given me the right insight to knowing exactly what to do in this current situation moving forward. But I mean, going through that litigation, going through that breakup of investor, must have been so painful. What did you learn? What did you learn from that process and that journey, and how did it shape you?
I think that it has shown me who I am, and I think the biggest gift to myself is learning more and more about myself. And I don't think that you ever truly find yourself, because I think that you've got different evolutions of life. You kind of the person I was when I was 20 and 30 and even 40 are completely different now. And not only did it going through the High Court case, but I also got married for a second time and divorced as well, and then came out as gay for 5 years ago. So there's been a number of different colourful...
There's so much in that sentence.
So many different colourful parts to life. I think that the best thing that I have got out of it actually has been for my children, really. I think that I have been able to give them a huge amount of emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. And whilst I often thought that I didn't plan for my children so much as they just kind of almost happened to me and to my life, but the relationships that I have with my children and they're 22 and 15, I feel that all of my experience has been for their benefit because of the person that I am to them and the relationship that I have with them. But I also believe very strongly that I am here to help others to be better versions of themselves. I am a very self-deprecating person. I think that is very much an ADHD trait. I'm very hard on myself. But I am...
It's also a very Asian trait too. So,
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people that can find it due to their upbringing
Yeah.
or various things as to why they're like that. So
yeah.
my learnings are to try and impart as much as I can to others. But I mean, I don't want to sound sort of self-righteous or anything like that
No.
in relation to that. But resilience. But then sometimes when I'm having a shit day, I'm like, where is all that resilience? Like, where are you? And then going through the stages of womanhood as women do.
The transformation.
You feel sometimes, some days you wake up and you're like, have I actually learned anything? But I do look back, as you say, hindsight is a great thing. I look back to when I did manage to buy the business, the sheer determination that I felt as that naive 26-year-old, calling the bank manager every day. I look at how we navigated our way through COVID, how we navigated our way through the GFC, how I navigated my way on my own through the High Court case. When I say on my own, I wasn't in a relationship, but I had my parents. They were incredible.
Yeah.
So it just shapes who you are, right? It shapes everything about who I am.
It does,
and it shapes how I want to show up for myself and for everybody else. It definitely shapes how I am in business as well.
You don't take no for an answer? What are your tendencies?
It's not about taking no for an answer, because I'm definitely somebody that can be affected, like everybody else, by rejection and all of those things. I think, everybody has got their own baggage, and definitely my daddy issues have given me an element of rejection that I don't particularly like. But I also try to look at things as from everybody else's perspective. So okay, well, maybe we're just not the right fit, or maybe actually them saying no was a gift for me, or all of those things. But I like to think that I live a lot of my life for other people. I live it either for my clients or for my children. And rising others up will then in turn make me feel that I've delivered on my own purpose. And if I can deliver on my own purpose, then I feel successful.
I've got so much respect for you, Lizzie. I mean, it's so cool to hear that, get to hear that part of the story. That determination as what, 20, did you say 26-year-old? To be able to make that investment, purchase the business, start it up. Have you at any stage, in your life just kind of thought, like, why? I could just, go find a job.
Often, and I have a business colleague who I have a good friendship with, and he and I will often call each other and go, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
What are we doing it for?
Yeah.
But I come from a family. My mother's 78 and she still works, and my dad died 2 years ago, but he was in his 80s and he was still working. I'm not someone that can sit around and do nothing. So
I gotcha.
Look, if I woke up tomorrow with nothing to do, I'd just go and find something more to do. It's just,
that's right.
And I feel actually very lucky. I found my purpose. I've found what I am passionate about. You found it fairly
early, didn't you?
I found it really early. And for someone who was so troubled at school and even in relationships, I've not had a successful relationship. But then, of course, what does a successful relationship look like?
It's all work.
Maybe actually mine is the example of success. I had a great relationship in my 20s, had my son, had another good relationship in my 30s, had my daughter, and then that moved on, and then I've had another relationship recently with a woman for 4 years. Maybe those were all the successful relationships that I needed for that part of my life at that time. But I don't know what the future looks like. So I just don't fit any kind of mould. And sometimes, if I was going to be honest, I'd like to be like other people.
I can empathise with that a lot, Lizzie. I think, I can empathise a lot. I think, with critical, in my 20s, we had these values. I couldn't hold down a full-time job, but I kind of thought, for me, in my 20s, where I took a year, so when I was 19, I had a parked car during uni. I was just overworking, got a bit burnt out. I had a parked car at about 60 miles an hour because I fell asleep on the wheel because I was just working overnight, didn't sleep for almost 2 days, burnt out. Hit a parked car, the seatbelt snapped my collarbone in half and ruptured my bowels. When I was in hospital, they didn't find the bowel issue, so they they got me to go, so they allowed me to go. As I was about to drive into my car, I had nurses and doctors rush in and be like, "You've got a ruptured bowel. We're going to take you into surgery." And it was a 8-hour surgery to sort of like
Whoa.
save my life. And I was in hospital for about 1 or 2 weeks in recovery. And that was one of those moments where I was like, I grew up with mates. Like we come from a Christian faith tradition. And it was always about like, what is a life? A life of meaning is a life in service of others. A life of meaning is about, dedicating my life to something a lot bigger than myself. And when I went into uni and when I went to try and find study, I found it really difficult because the prevalent culture was about personal success and legacy, and it wasn't even about solving problems. It was about how do I get the best job in an architecture firm, and that was the culture at the time. I know that the university culture sort of swings from eras to era, but I found myself in my 20s with a group of mates, and we all had some of these spare rooms, these flats, and because my mates were youth workers and teachers, we had these shared values of how do we share our lives with our neighbours and support and love them, sort of in a way, and use our privilege, place from relative privilege, to serve our neighbours. And that started like a 10-year journey in my 20s, where we had these spare rooms, we had people come stay with us. My mate would come home and be like, "Oh, I met this lady. She was on the street and trying to come out of prostitution. Her partner, they have a young kid. Her partner is just trying to come out of mongrel mob. They need a place to stay." And we're like, "Yeah, sure." And that started up a 8-year journey with them, being a part of their life as they raised their kid, and all the messiness of, "Hey guys, look, we love you. No, you can't treat each other that way. No, you can't have a domestic here. That's not what it is. Nope, you can't have drugs." It's a real beautiful moments of far out. I feel so privileged, to get to be the uncle of your first kid and your following kids. And I was in my 20s. I had no idea what I was doing, sort of thing. But some good stories, funny stories, cool stories where almost got bashed by gang members and stuff.
Probably we were regularly, I would imagine.
Yeah, sort of doing that. And it just anchored, for me, it anchored sort of this purpose. Okay, so business, design, whatever this thing, I love, one of my favorite theologians is this fellow called Friedrich Buechner, and he talks about the purpose of our lives is the intersection of what brings us the deepest joy is when our deepest joy meets the world's deepest need. And that's always been that purpose sort of focus. And when, with Critical, again, I was like, for a good, for all of my 20s, I feel like, until I was maybe 27, I was like, man, my mates who's come out of architecture school, they're off in Barcelona designing these cool buildings, working for big name architects. I'm stuck in an intermediate woodwork shop, mucking around with fucking plastics. What the fuck am I doing? A lot of those moments, but it all makes sense, and I think it all started to make sense, and it all will continue to make sense as well. But I empathize with you, right? There are days when I'm just like, you know what,
just so a bit hard.
Don't give me your fucking problems. Yeah. Go solve it yourself and leave me alone. I don't feel like showing up to work, there was probably 2 days last week, I'm like, I don't feel like showing up to work today, but showed up anyway, kind of thing. So I empathize.
I think initially when I went into design, I found it really difficult to connect it with my purpose. I'm like, how can just going and designing people's offices or people's shops or all that kind of stuff, how does that have anything to do with purpose? And it wasn't until I got a bit older and through experience and stuff like that that I actually was able to articulate, I don't live for an award. In fact, we've seen a whole lot of things coming out about people being finalists in awards. And I'm like, I just loathe it. And I get told regularly, you should enter your stuff in for an award. And I'm like, if that's what you think of me and of us, then you've got us wrong. I mean, yes, I know that certainly for some of the younger designers in the business, if they're involved in a project and it wins an award, it's a great feeling. I'm not going to begrudge anyone that. I'm just more that it's not why we exist, and it's not why we start a project. And if you start a project thinking we have to win an award or we're going to enter it into an award, I've missed the whole essence, and it's the part that you talk about being in service of others and in service of we are in service for business. But the reason we're in service for businesses is because they then want to create an outcome. So essentially we're in service of the people that work there, either the customer or the employee or all of those things. So that is our impact. Our impact is to make people feel better in space and to influence their behaviour, to create outcomes. So I think understanding that and then being able to articulate that has been a big part for my life, for sure.
That's beautiful. You mentioned also, since Spaceworks, you had to weather, a 2008 GFC, you had to weather COVID. I mean, you've seen a lot.
We weathered also... Whitcoulls went into voluntary administration in about 2010. So one of the biggest things that actually got us through the GFC was actually taking on Whitcoulls as a client. So Whitcoulls were a pretty big business for us at the time. We're only about 4 staff. But we grew 300% year on year through the GFC. So we had after a slow start going up, but having a holy shit moment, thinking, how are we going to get through this? Because the bottom was falling out of the office market. We then moved into retail. And then Whitcoulls was amazing for us, but then they went into voluntary administration, and again we're staring down the barrel of potential failure because they owed us over a couple of $100,000, and for a business of 4 people, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of cash.
A lot of money. So again, we had to pivot really quickly and try and figure out who and what we were and what we were doing. And there's been various other things over the years, whether they have been staff or personnel type things, and then we obviously had COVID and getting through that, and then we had a rogue PM that cost us a lot of money. So I think in all of these things, you just you weather them, but you learn things. Like I learned things like, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You've got to keep your risk profile. We need to have a good cross-section of projects in different sectors and of different sizes. So I've learned a lot of things which I guess become the underpin the business model to make sure that the business model can weather storms. But the biggest ability to weather storms is my stability. So I have what I call my toolbox, and my toolbox is around making sure that I go to yoga, making sure that I exercise daily, making sure that I meditate, making sure that I journal. I know I'm an overthinker, so making sure that I do take my ADHD medication, make sure that I can be through the day. I have to be very aware of my womanly cycles, because I know that week prior I'm a complete basket case and you cannot trust anything that I'm feeling. Like there's things that I'm like, okay, that's my toolbox. What is it that I need to do to tighten things up? Use a toolbox to fix things, right? So my toolbox gets me back onto the straight and narrow.
One of the things I found is it's like how do you fall back to daily rituals and behaviours? Like exercise, massive. I think I've started getting up early in the morning, drink of water, do some reps to wake the body up, and go and go in half an hour, 45 minutes in the gym, back to get the kids ready for school, sort of thing. And the days when we haven't fallen into those rhythms, I feel it, I really feel it all over the place. Not on my A game. But I found these rhythms also anchor, and it helps to weather out these really tough, tough challenges that business and life throws at you.
Yeah, they're important.
I've got 2 more questions, which is I still got heaps of questions about the body sculpting days. You threw it out there, and we can't not talk about it. That wasn't one of my questions, but I mean,
it was the structure for me, because I think that I internally, this is before I was medicated and before I understood about ADHD and all those sorts of things. What goes on in my brain sometimes feels like a tornado and a hurricane, and I've had times where I have felt quite depressed, and I've realised that it is actually just emotional dysregulation. So really learning how to work with my emotional dysregulation. So I found that when I created things of real structure. Like with body sculpting, it meant that you didn't drink, that you exercised, that you prioritized, and you were really focused on feeling good in your body, and feeling good in your body also then had an outcome that you felt good in your mind. So it was one of those things that really helped me with the structure of understanding I need elements of structure, and when I have structure, I can allow. Now what I think is a very beautiful thing is that I can allow my mind to go off and go wild because I know that I have structure to bring myself back into a place of equilibrium.
Amazing. So many questions about that still, but I love to understand and hear, what are you looking forward to, Lizzie? You know, like looking into the next season of your life, right? Whether if it's Spaceworks, or whether if it's ventures that you're working on, like, what are you looking forward to? Like, what do you look forward to?
Well, I'm single, so I guess at some point someone will be put in front of me as my next experience to have and to enjoy. So I don't know whether that means that in that new experience there'll be somebody else's children or and I'm not sure, to be honest, whether it's a woman or a man. I don't know where I sit in that whole world, which has been an interesting exploration for me in itself. I really came off the rails when I broke up with my girlfriend to go, well, where do I fit now? Especially being single. Am I just kind of in this no man's land of am I still part of the rainbow communities? What happened if I ever dated a man again? Would that mean I'm then excommunicated from that community, and will people think that I was just going through a phase? So there's a whole self-understanding going on in that regard. But from a business perspective, I've never felt more dialed in terms of what we do, what we offer, who we are. I have had thoughts about wanting to go and do my master's in relation to design, particularly around how design creates business impact. So I really want to kind of give myself the grace to go back and do a form of academia, knowing now how to work with my brain. And I would like to articulate the way we do business and the way that I believe in design as a philosophy and as a calculator, as a tool for business impact, and actually articulate that into something that is formulated words, language. Beautiful. So that, I think, is in my path. And then just watching my beautiful children grow up and being really impactful. I'm really hoping to be a grandma at some point. I would love some more children in my life. My son is only 22, so I don't want to wish him children too soon. But yeah.
Oh, I started when I was 24, so.
There you go. I was 26. So I really want to have young children around me again. Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
I don't know. I think it's kind of one of those things where you can really try and create too much of your life, and I don't have to, because I've got the business. I've got my children. So I really just have to let life come to me in the way that it wants to come to me.
Yeah. Beautiful. You know, what's one advice? You know, look back to your younger self, younger Lizzie. You can decide whether if it's the 16-year-old Lizzie that felt out of place at school, or, you know, single mum Lizzie in that early stage period of juggling. But what would you tell yourself? You know, like if you were to, you know, what's one advice you'll give to yourself now, knowing what you know now?
Well, I you know, like my daughter is at high school now, and every now and then we'll get an email from the school about a child that's taken their own life. And every time it happens, it kind of shakes me to my core, because it makes you petrified as a parent for your own child. But I think the thing that I would say to anyone is that it actually always gets better. And it is something that I even say to myself, that even in the darkest of moments that you might have today, or even in that moment, or even in that situation, it actually always gets better. So I would tell myself that it is always going to get better, and it is always going to change. But I'd also just, one of the analogies I try to live by is that you just actually have to stop paddling upstream, and you just actually need to let go and go with it all. And if you allow yourself, I kind of think of myself as floating down a river. If you allow yourself to be in the tire, looking around and enjoying it, what feels like there might be chaos around you, there's moments of beauty. And working for the paint shop has given me the most amazing appreciation of colour. And a sunset and a sunrise just make you realise that everything is so much bigger than yourself.
Far out, well, tēnā koe hoa. I feel like that's a beautiful way to end this really beautiful and vulnerable kōrero. I feel like you hold so much wisdom through your life experience, and I feel like you got so much to offer, not just in the mahi that you do, but also just in who you are as well. Like, I really enjoy this kōrero. I think it's...
Thank you. Same.
I don't say this, but it's one of my favourites for sure.
I feel like we could talk for hours.
I know,
It's
I
very
know.
dangerous.
I mean, where do we want to go? I mean, we can go down on the body sculpting days and talk about bodybuilding. We can talk about life and parenting and entrepreneurial challenges.
Talk about rainbows.
business.
We can talk about neurodiversity. We can talk about
Oh man, we might
collection
have
of his ex-husbands.
Yeah, yes. Talk about all the fullness of life experiences that we have. But man, thank you so much. Like,
You're welcome.
really appreciate your vulnerability, and wasn't expecting this to be hey, you know, if we've got any audience out there, Lizzie is here looking for a next season in life.
Yeah, I am.
Well, kia ora. So good to have you,
Thank you.
and man, I feel like my respect for you has grown deeper. You know,
Thanks, Rowan.
really appreciate your time.
Appreciate
yeah,
it.
so good.
Yeah.
Mean, where do people find you, Lizzie? How do they get to know? Yeah, you know, like, what's your Instagram, website, all that kind of stuff? If they want to reach out to learn about your mahi or anything else, you know, where do they find you?
Well, my thinking around design
Yep.
and all of those things are on LinkedIn. So Lizzi Whaley on LinkedIn. My Instagram is Lizzi Whaley. That's more my life as a human, the colourful aspects of life, and then of course Spaceworks _NZ is our company Instagram, and Spaceworks is also on LinkedIn as well. But yeah.
Beautiful. There we go. I'll see you guys on the next one. And that's us.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lizzie.